so had the chance to work with him on a couple projects related to fairness and fair treatment, and how can employees and leaders work to ensure that what they're doing is fair, especially at times when you can't always give people what they want, and there's ways to mitigate sort of people's perceptions that this is not fair. And so there's ways of communicating how you're treating people. There's ways of making people feel like they're valued and appreciated that can ultimately impact how fairly, sort of people's reactions to those situations. And the idea of sort of the utmost unfair treatment, sort of bullying and harassment and incivility and counterproductive behavior, there's lots of terms that kind of refer to this general set of behaviors, but it's just, not treating people well in the workplace started to emerge as an interest of mine. And so that's ultimately what I sort of took another fork in the road and focused on for my dissertation, was really sort of looking at what organizations do or don't do that may encourage or discourage people from engaging in these more negative behaviors in the workplace.
And what's an example of incivility or counterproductive behaviors?
Great question. So I could say counterproductive behaviors kind of range the spectrum from more mild, seemingly innocuous behaviors that signal sort of low-level rudeness or disrespect. And those would be sort of the uncivil behaviors that you might see. So someone who, doesn't include you on an important email that you should be included in. It's sort of a low level slight, which to some extent could also be dismissed as, I didn't intentionally forget to include you on this. I was just rushing and I forgot to include you. But nevertheless, in the eye of the target or the person who experiences it, it's rude, and it doesn't necessarily signal a lot of respect.
Yeah. So that's actually happened to me quite a bit over my career. And I try to always assume good intent, but then also confront the situation civilly. I mean, what is a good course of action there, though? Because it is kind of hard to determine emotion through an email transaction or meeting notice, but still.
Right. I think the volume of electronic communication that we use and operate by, just amplifies this as an issue, because, when you've got 20 things going on and you're sending out a meeting notice, you very well could completely accidentally forget to leave someone off. And it is not rude. It's just, I wasn't focused on what I should be doing. Or it could be a subtle dig against them. Like, hey, I've got a little bit more power than you, and I'm going to, show you that I can do that by excluding you. So I think your assume best intent, give people the benefit of the doubt, is a good place to start. Because you don't know what the intent is when the behaviors are more subtle.
And you don't want to see ghosts that aren't there, but it's the same point. You also don't want to tolerate and accept that.
Right. But I also think this point about give the benefit of the doubt, you don't do so with sort of open-ended benefit of the doubt, because the thinking about what happened or what could have happened or what should have happened, the rumination that happens often with these low-level behaviors is not insignificant.
Yeah.
And trying to make sense of what happened and why it happened, that takes up a lot of valuable time and energy that people could otherwise be spending doing their actual work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it causes psychological distress for the person, because you end up ruminating on it and why did this happen and should I confront it? And
Exactly. And I think the task of confronting, or the opportunity to confront, is often one that we say is what you should do. But
don't listen to me, anybody. Do not take my advice.
But it's like, I don't know about you, but trying to have a negative that type of,
Yeah.
negative conversation is one that is just really hard, even
Yeah.
for people who say, sort of get in the driver's seat and try to take control of the situation and figure out a way where you can constructively confront someone. It's
Yeah.
hard to do it with, you know, people who are, important to you in your life, like partners and spouses and kids, never mind then trying to extend that to the realm of the
Yeah.
workplace. Like, how do I say what I need to say to let someone else know that they've treated me in a way that was hurtful or rude and that it needs to stop, and say it in a way that is professional and appropriate. It's tricky. And I think a lot of times, role playing it like, we could do
Yeah.
this right now, right? Because oftentimes the people who are enacting this stuff, sometimes they're clients or customers who you don't know particularly well, but oftentimes it's colleagues or bosses who you do know.
Yeah.
And so you probably have also seen how they might react to this type of message. Are they going to fly off the handle? Are they going to be calm when you say it? And so kind of role playing how you might want to have this conversation and kind of be a couple steps ahead about how the person might respond is not a bad idea. I would say with any important conversation you're going to have at work, you kind of do want to be a few steps ahead of how you think it might
Totally.
go, so that you've got a script in your mind about how you might want it to play out, so that you can ultimately redirect the conversation back to the issue at hand and just get your point across. And so if the point is, when you rolled your eyes at me in the meeting last week, I don't know if you were just overwhelmed or if you meant to signal that my idea was total BS, but that's how I felt and that's how I took it.
Yeah.
So please don't do that, because my points of view are valuable and I know you know that they are. So, please stop.
Yeah.
But being able to sort of say that in theory and say that in practice is tough. And so in advising people to kind of stick up for themselves in that respect, I realize that doesn't come without a lot of preparation and courage and willingness to act. And I think whether it's confronting someone about sort of small stuff like rolling your eyes or much bigger stuff, you know, we could talk a lot about why it's hard to confront people about the bigger
Yeah.
issues of mistreatment and why we're seeing a reckoning in sort of society around that these days too,
This is
because
fascinating.
oftentimes the
Yeah.
people who are, in positions of power, who have the ability to offer or withhold opportunities, resources, pay, they're the ones who are perpetuating this. It, the it is difficult, and that is putting it lightly.